I took my first ecstasy pill that evening. This is the first time it really did for me what I couldn't do for myself. And I just remember making a conscious decision on the dance floor that I am going to do this for the rest of my life. Now I'm in a state of chronic alcoholism and addiction. I'm drinking and using 24/7. My eldest girl, she said to me, "Mum, you've got to stop." And I said, "I can't." She went, "Mum, you aren't drinking because of your life. Your life is like this because of your drinking." Forgiveness as well has given me freedom. The paedophiles that abuse me, I now make a donation to a paedophile organisation that helps to rehabilitate these people that ask for it.
Hello and welcome to 12 Steps and 12 Questions. My name is Silvio and I'm an addict. This pod is full of personal and inspirational stories of recovery from addiction. And in every episode I'll ask each guest the same 12 questions about their life, addiction and recovery. Quick warning, there will be some graphic descriptions and a healthy amount of swearing. For this episode, please welcome Jaynie. Hi fellow 12-steppers, welcome to a new episode of 12 Steps and 12 Questions. Please help me share the message of recovery by liking and rating this pod wherever you listen to it, or by sharing it with your recovery circle. It's a great way to work our 12th step. Now, let's get to my guest for today. I'm pleased that she's here. Jaynie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Yes, my name's Jaynie. I'm a recovered addict and alcoholic. I have a home group, which is in Shepperton, and in just under 7 weeks, I'll be 14 years without any mind-altering substance, which I find quite phenomenal. Yeah, thank you.
It is quite phenomenal. That is quite phenomenal. Thank you, Jaynie. Thank you for your introduction. Let's get cracking and let's get right to it, to the 12 questions I ask everyone on this pod. The first one of which is, Jaynie, did you have any adverse childhood experiences?
Wow. It's really interesting that you should ask that as the first question because yes, I absolutely did. And I've actually been doing a lot of work on myself with regards to this stuff coming up recently, you know. So it's coming up a lot lately, and which is, you know, in our program we talk about in our promises, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, and it's taken a long time for me to start to really recognise where they're quite active in my life. Yeah.
And so adverse childhood experiences, of course, are things that, as the name suggests, are difficult experiences that we have in our childhood. You know, so anything from, just talking of the ones that I've encountered, for instance, emotional violence, physical violence. Other things are poverty in your childhood, loss in your childhood, as in loss of people that were close to us, that we love. So I've experienced quite a few of those, and the regular listeners will probably know all of them by now, but which ones were the ones that you encountered in your childhood? What were your adverse experiences?
Okay, well, I had a mother who I would describe as a rageaholic. You know, she completely changed the way that she felt about situations, a lack of control by severe violence. It was quite extreme in some cases.
Right.
And, you know, I wouldn't, you know, you used the word poverty, and as you said it sort of brought about, I wasn't deprived of food or finance or money or anything in that respect, but I was extremely poor when it came to love and affection. You know,
Wow.
I second-guessed myself still quite a lot because we were told from a really early age, you know, do not repeat what you see go on outside.
Yeah.
I would see stuff that would happen. I was told that I'd imagined it, that it wasn't real, you know, and also as well to escape the very violent environment that I was in, you know, because I never knew from one day to the next what I was going to be dealing with.
So you experienced, from what you were hinting at there, at a lack of love, at a lack of poverty of love, so to speak. It sounds poetic, but it's hard. How did that manifest in your life?
I craved attention. I just wanted somebody to see me, to hear me, to recognise that I could do good stuff. At school, I excelled academically. I was moved up 3 years in primary school, and I was in every single athletics team. I pushed myself so hard to be seen, to be noticed for anything, to the extreme, to the absolute extreme.
Because you felt you weren't seen by your mum and your dad? Is that what you're saying?
I just didn't feel like I was good enough. I had 3 older brothers and I was the only girl. There was a massive age difference between us. I felt that if I was better than everybody else, then I would be acknowledged and loved. I mean, that's looking back in hindsight. As a little girl, I just didn't feel. I felt ugly. I felt stupid. I just didn't feel enough.
Yeah.
Like there was something bad about me inside, really bad.
It's really tough, I mean, as a child, of course. So when I think about the way it felt when I was a child, it's a sense of unease, a sense of wrongness. That's the only thing that you really experience at the time, right? It's very difficult to put those things into words, even now sometimes, right? When we're grown adults. And so as a child, there's just a sense that something is off, something's not right, and you just try with your very limited means to make it right, Did you feel that this was coming from one of the 2 parents in particular, or was it something that just happened around you and it wasn't one person? So for instance, in my case, I had a difficult relationship with my father who had his own struggles. And I felt that he wasn't on my side, even though I think now he was, but at the time I didn't. Yeah, and I felt that it came from my dad. Was it from one particular parent that you felt these things?
I kind of blamed my mother for everything. My father too, I believe, was an alcoholic of a type, but I blamed my mother for that. It was like everything that went wrong, I blamed her. Because I think that in a way it was her that I craved the love from the most. And the way I sort of, that resentment manifested towards her was like everything that went wrong in our family, I blamed it on her. I couldn't see that maybe she was that way because of some of the dysfunction.
Yeah.
And it was like, I at times, I hated her for it. I really hated her for it. But I was desperate for this love, to just be. I'd seen my friends with their mums and they'd have this really special relationship, and sometimes me and my mum would have that. But it would be very short-lived and you would never know how long you was going to get it for. It was a very fear-based relationship.
Sounds really conditional, certainly in the way it might have affected you. I find it difficult. It was really good with my dad sometimes, right? Things were great. He was loving. We got on really well for a short amount of time, and he'd take me to places and whatnot. And then all of a sudden it kind of disappeared again out of nowhere. And it seemed to me at that time, I could never really make sense of this. And I think I went pretty much into myself really and just kind of hid a little bit because you just don't know what's coming.
Yeah, absolutely. And, because I think with the violence that was in our family, because it wasn't just directed at me, there was a lot of physical violence towards myself and my siblings. My father was quite aggressive towards my mother when he would come home inebriated. And as a small child, and my brothers would fight with each other. These were young men when I was a little kid.
Of course.
And I spent most of my time screaming, please, please, please. And I sort of took this personality out onto the street with me. So I didn't know how to deal with social situations.
Yeah.
It was just a life filled with coping mechanisms of protecting myself, trying to gauge is someone going to get hurt? Am I going to get hurt? You know, all that kind of stuff. And it was really difficult. And I'd go home and sometimes I'd, you know, as much as I'd be frightened of being on my own alone, I almost craved it, because it was like in that moment, I knew I wasn't going to get hurt.
What I'm trying to find out a little bit, get a bit of a clearer picture about is how often did this happen, or even were there any breaks in there for you? Was it constant, or was it like an up and down type thing? Because I then went through weeks or months where not a lot would happen, and then all of a sudden all hell would break loose again, and there'd be violence, lots of it directed towards my sister, some of it directed towards me trying to stop them, and all of that. But then there'll be weeks, you know, where not a lot would happen, and it would look all right to the outside world. You kind of go, oh, look, they seem to be all right. Did you have a similar sort of up and down movement, or was it incessant? Was it just continuous?
It's a good question, because there was so many individuals involved in it. There was quite a lot of it, because it wasn't always necessarily, you know, but the violence that was targeted at us would sort of come in these spasms, so to speak. And it was almost as if, it was almost like binging, people that binge drink, or, you know, with drugs, and they'd have this massive blowout, and then they're sort of like, oh God, what have I done? And, you know, these moments of violence, they would increase gradually, and then they would end in this explosion of these different personalities trying to cope with what was going on, you know, and it would kick right off. And then all of a sudden we'd get this little lull where it'd be quiet for a while, you know, because it could be instigated by the police turning up for my brothers, something that my dad's done, and we would get this explosion. But there was this intensity. It was almost, looking back now, I could see it was like something was being tightened up like a spring, and then it would explode, and then we would have this moment of aftermath where, but the strange thing was, it was almost like, apart from one of my siblings, it was like nothing had happened. It was just brushed under the carpet. It wasn't spoke about. Nobody acknowledged that something wrong had happened. It was just, you don't talk about it, and that was that. You know, really weird.
Yeah, it is quite weird. We'd never really talked much about it in that respect either. It was very much a nothing to see here. You know, I grew up with, you know, with this, there's always drama in the house, right? Doors banging, people shouting, all of that sort of thing. And then we'd go through a lull maybe, and so on. And it wasn't until quite a bit later, you know, when I sort of have the insight, right, that into other people's lives, because maybe I had a girlfriend or something like that, you know, or that I would realize that not everybody is like that. Not every family is like that they would, you know, yell all the time or be upset with each other all the time, that this wasn't the sort of norm for many people.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, let's move on to our question 2 slowly but surely, which is, what did the moment you first got hooked? What did the fun times look like? So you are in a family which has a lot of violence, some dysfunction, if you don't mind me saying this. And you're growing up with a sense of having to manage things really early on, much more than, you know, other people might do, you know, where this sort of gets introduced a bit later, perhaps, into life. So you're growing up with quite a few difficulties, emotional difficulties. And at some point, a substance or a behavior comes into your life, which changes you and changes the way you do things. What was the substance or the behavior, and how did it first affect you?
Definitely alcohol, without a doubt. And it's really strange, because for me, it sort of happened in 2 phases. So I had this first initial relationship with alcohol when I was really quite young. I was about 10 years of age. And my friends were all out. It was the holidays, and I was the only child. I was a latchkey kid because my parents both worked. And I drank this half pint of clear liquids. It was a mixture of vodka, gin, all the clear liquids that were in the bottles. And the reason I only took a little bit out of each one was so that you couldn't notice that much had gone out of it. And I made this half pint glass up. Even then I was stealing and manipulating. It was like I was thinking she'll know. So if I just take a little bit out of each one, I can have more. And I remember I knocked it back. I held my nose. It was like firewater. And I can even remember I was playing, it was Gino. I put the record on, the 7-inch record Gino on the record player.
Yeah.
And I just remember dancing to it and I just felt absolutely free. But from that point on, I never really had a good experience.
So after your first experience with alcohol, of putting together all these liquids and knocking it back and dancing, you know, how did it progress from there? I mean, it's a young age to start at, 10, you know.
Yeah.
How did it go from there?
Do you know what it was? It was like suddenly I just didn't care that she might come home and catch me and sort of like all hell would break loose and the violence. It was the only time when I wasn't frightened. So it was like every opportunity that I got to drink, I would take it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You know, and it always ended in trouble because I always took it to the extreme where I would be violently sick. I would come in and collapse. I would do anything to basically get that moment of like secret drinking in, but it never was secret because I'd end up in such a dismal state.
Yeah. So if I circle back to the question, with the question being what were the fun times, what did that look like? Were there any fun times, or was it really problematic, medicating, self-medicating right from the start?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, in my teens and my early adolescence, well, it was, you know, from the age of, I would say 11 to 22, there wasn't really much fun.
Right.
There really wasn't.
Was there any fun later? I mean, it's an obvious question, I suppose, but let's just go there for a second. What happened at 22?
Yeah, well, I fell pregnant with my first child. I made a decision I wasn't going to drink because I clearly knew that it was a problem. And I desperately wanted to be this mother that I'd never had. So I made a decision to stop and I did. I fell pregnant very quickly with my second child and I still didn't drink. And then when she was 6 months old, which was about 2.5 years later, I went out with a friend and I remember I hadn't been out for years. And I walked into this pub and the fear of all these people, like all the energy, I just thought, oh my God, I can't cope. I've got to get out of it. And I remember I went to the toilet. I was physically sick. I came out and I was going to make my excuses to my friend, and one of my brother's friends was there. And I was literally ready to leave. And he looked at me and he went, my God, he went, how are you? Do you want a drink? And it just came out. I went, I'll have a double JD and Coke. And this is the moment where it absolutely took over my life. I know in that moment, this is the first time it really did for me what I couldn't do for myself. And I picked up the drink, and I remember I was terrified when I picked it up. And by the time I put the glass back down on the bar, I just looked at this guy and I was like, where's the party? And I took my first ecstasy pill that day or that evening. And I just remember making a conscious decision on the dance floor that I am going to do this for the rest of my life. Ooh. This is exactly what I needed.
Oh, this pushes a lot of buttons, you know, for me too. I'm loving this clarity here, Jaynie, about making a conscious decision. You know,
yeah.
Can you slow that down a bit for us? Because I remember making a few conscious decisions like that, which were looked at in broad daylight by anyone halfway sane. Yeah, would be just making a decision to ruin your own life, right? isn't it interesting that we take this decision almost as a conscious one? Not it kind of crept in through the back door. No, I'm opening the front door knowingly to this, because I think it'll do something for me that I can't do for myself.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing was, not very long before that, I'd made a conscious decision to not drink alcohol because it would, you know, it would prevent me from being this mother that I dreamed of always having.
Yeah.
And yet here I am in a nightclub, not only drinking, but taking A-class drugs, which I'd never experimented with. I'd swore I'd never take drugs. And then again, making this next conscious decision. Wow, this is what I needed.
Yeah.
This is exactly what I needed in my life. The only conscious decisions that I'd ever made before then was, I'm never going to let anybody hurt me. You know, if anybody touches me, I'm going to fight them until they don't want to fight me anymore. But this was different. This was like, that was like fear and violence. This was like, wow, I feel great. I love this. Yeah. I love everyone. I just want to live my rest of my life like this.
Absolutely. I think I speaking of conscious decisions, there's a few that I made like this. You know, one of them most definitely with ecstasy pills, and thinking I've just found the best thing ever. This is going to work for me in all situations. This is amazing, you know. And then I also later on, you know, and I had already stopped using drugs once, and they had run me into the ground once, or run myself into the ground with them once, and still, you know, I had another go at them in my 40s, and deciding that this was the best way for me to just try to live a life that I felt was unlivable in some ways. And, you know, it was supposed to help me a little bit with trauma and all sorts of other things. You know, it's really unhealthy, stupid decisions, really, you know, speaking of myself, of course, but still, you know, you can't really make this up. But it was a conscious decision. It really was. Yeah, absolutely. How did it progress from there then? You know, here you are, you're a young mother, you have 2 children. You are, by your own description, quite full of fear on the one hand. On the other hand, you are also, you have this idea in your head that you don't want to be the mother that you used to have. You want to be the mother that you always wanted, which is in itself quite a tall order. How did it progress?
Well, what I didn't touch upon earlier was that one of the ways that I would escape the very violent household would be that I became a street raker. So the way that this now progressed is that I was abused by paedophiles as a child as well. So not only have I got this warped sense of what love is in a relationship, I've also got this unhealthy idea around sex. And I've got this craving for love. So I've discovered now A-class drugs. I've opened a completely different door now. And very quickly, I was sort of like then introduced to cocaine, which I made another conscious decision was, oh my God, this is what I need to control my alcohol. You know, it wasn't even my alcoholism. It was just, this is what I need to stop me going into blackout and getting into trouble.
Yeah.
You know, it was never like you need to stop completely. It was like, what can I find that's going to enable me to do this properly?
Yeah.
And cocaine became that. And I mean, the world of ecstasy, as you said, it was like, oh my God, everybody loved each other. It was amazing. There was music, there was lights. I loved it. You know, it quickly went from I'm going to do this once a month to then I was doing it twice a month. Then I was doing it 3 times a month. Then I was doing it every single week, twice a week.
Yeah.
Then I got asked if I wanted to dance for the clubs. So that meant free entry, lots of friends, and free drugs and alcohol whenever I wanted. And I felt famous as well, which was even more insane. And then cocaine was introduced to it, and then that's when it turned. It turned on a sixpence, but I couldn't see it. I thought that I was part of the elite. It was expensive watches, nice clothes, flash cars. The guys that were sort of people would just move out the way. They could get in anywhere that they wanted. And I thought I'd arrived. I really thought I'd arrived.
Yeah.
I thought in that moment that I'd made it. And that was how it progressed for me. That love, that adoration I'd always been searching for, I felt like that it had arrived, but it came at a massive price.
Yeah. Was there at that time, I mean, you say you'd arrived, straight out of Bill's story, and something that I know full well. I've had it a few times in my drug career as well, this sense of like, yeah, this is it, mate,
Yeah.
And really being overtaken by this feeling, but also by events, not really being able to see it, this sort of really murky sense of reality. And was there an intersection with what you were saying about sex? Did this sort of cross with the drugs right away, or did it come a bit later?
I think it's strange because with the ecstasy, it was like I was a very solitude character. I just wanted to dance. And even, dancing was a massive part of my growing up. I suppose really when I speak about it now, it was the first thing apart from reading that really changed the way that I felt. Reading and dancing were my two non-alcoholic or mind-altering substances that took me out of the way that I felt.
Yeah.
And so this fact that I could dance in this free way, like a free spirit with ecstasy, was like, it was just amazing.
My question was that did the issue with the drugs, did it sort of come together with the issue of the sex right away, or is it something that sort of just came in a bit later?
No, so with the ecstasy, no, it didn't, because it enabled me to do this, to dance, which I just loved. It took me to a whole new level of dancing. But what happened was, however, with cocaine, it was almost instant. When cocaine was introduced, when I introduced it into my program for living,
yeah,
as it became a design for living in that moment. It really did change me completely. It gave me this utter confidence that the sex side of it went hand in hand with it. It got sorted really, really quickly. And at the time, I couldn't see it. Looking back now, and along with the trauma with paedophiles when I was a child, and then entering into this really sordid relationship with cocaine, it took on a completely different turn. It got very dark very quickly. Yeah.
I think certainly out of my own experience with ecstasy, everything was just about. It gave me a real high. It changed my perception in many ways, and it gave me this real, incredibly intense experience. Whereas cocaine was always for me, and I'm very trying to word this as carefully as possible, it was always for me, it gave me an impression of control, which is entirely different. One was about letting things go, but ecstasy was about letting it all go, letting it all out, and dancing and all of that. Whereas cocaine was trying to grab hold of a situation, trying to control things, gave me an illusion of control.
I love that. That's just given me a whole new perspective on it. I've never really looked at it like that. Absolutely. They were sort of like the yin and the yang. So with ecstasy, I didn't need control. I didn't have to be anything. I could just go with it like a free spirit. But absolutely, cocaine gave me this idea that I was the master, that I was in absolute control of every situation, that I had all power. And I was running the show. I was absolutely running the show.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it just got so dark so quickly. When you put it like that, it controlled my alcohol. I stopped taking ecstasy when I became a prolific cocaine user. It did absolutely nothing for my cocaine buzz.
Yeah.
And the way I cleaned the house, the way I dealt with my partner at the time, who was extremely violent. I lost my spleen in that relationship. I died twice in front of my children. Cocaine just ripped through us at an astronomical speed, Our
question 3 really fits in quite well with this. which is our question 3 is, what were your worst consequences and finally your rock bottom? Now, it sounds like cocaine really had a hold on you there. You had entered a toxic relationship with this man, but you still have young children, of course, and you said that it ripped and roared through your relationship, through your lives at astronomical speed, if I can use your words. What did that look like, and how did it progress towards what would eventually be your rock bottom? If you're enjoying this podcast and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe.
So I fell pregnant again with 2 children after my eldest 2, but I didn't stop using with days. It was I carried on drinking, and when I had my first child, my second son, I was still drinking alcohol, but I wasn't using cocaine. But he would go out still, and I remember he came back, and I was absolutely livid. And I don't even really think it was so much because he'd gone on the missing list. I think it was because I knew I couldn't do it. And I kicked off at him. He'd been missing all week. And what happened was there was an altercation which led to me being clubbed from behind with a massive JD bottle. And I went to the hospital. They said nothing was wrong. And then a week later I collapsed, and it turned out that I had internal bleeding. I had a ruptured spleen, and I was on death's door, but I still got me to hospital. And all the time I'm saying to people, look, I'm really ill. Please, I need some help. But this time now I've stopped drinking as well for the week. I'm thinking it's the alcohol. And there was one kind doctor, and he said, look, you've got to find this lady a bed. And they did a scan in the morning, and within 25 minutes of me having a CT scan, I was under the knife because they actually thought I was going to die. And I remember that I was just before, because I come back from the CT scan, and it was so surreal. It was like really weird. It was like everything was in slow motion, and I didn't have the results. And I got out from the wheelchair, and I went to brush my teeth, and they were curtains then separating. They weren't rooms. And I remember the curtain went back, and there was a nurse standing behind me with this wheelchair again. And she said to me, you need to get in the wheelchair. And I looked at her and I went, but my bed's only over there. And she said, no, you need to get in this chair. And I could feel the mood had got really serious.
Yeah.
And I got into this bed, into this chair. And as she wheeled me towards my bed, I noticed there was about 10 professionals all around my bed. They were getting machines out. People had paperwork. And I got out of the chair and sat on my bed. And this surgeon, Dr. Carney I remember he leant down and he said to me, I need you to sign this. And I went, what is it? He said, we're going to operate on you. We're going to remove your spleen. And I said to him, but why? And he said, listen, he said, we need to do it, and we need to do it now. And I said, but I might die. And he looked at me and he went, I can't believe you're still alive. And as he said it, even now it makes me really emotional. I turned around, and the guy that did it to me was standing there with our baby in his arms, and my little girl who was about 6 at the time, and my son who was 7 and had massive problems at school. I remember this little tear just fell down her face because she'd heard what he said.
Yeah.
And I just looked at this doctor and I went to him, please don't let me die. And he said, we're going to do everything we can. And they did the splenectomy. I was out of hospital within 2 weeks. And I was still with this guy. There was stuff going on in the background. It's too complicated to go into. But it turned out the day that I came out of hospital, he forced himself upon me, and I fell pregnant with my youngest daughter, and I just couldn't get out of this relationship. And I literally just smashed myself to pieces with alcohol while I was pregnant with her. And it was the start of the end for me, really. It was the start of the end, It was like, now I'm in a state of chronic alcoholism and addiction. I'm drinking and using 24/7. I'm waking up of a daytime. I'm literally fighting for my life. Like, in reality, it's like I'm in this crazy domestic violent relationship. I'm now stabbing him to protect myself from him because I don't want to die and I need to look after my kids. And it just spiraled out of control. And then it culminated eventually in my son when he was 14 years of age. He ran away from home and was telling people that I was dead. And at 2:00 one morning on the 8th of January, in 2008, I remember I was sobbing at the kitchen table, and my daughter, who was then 13 at the time, my eldest girl, she said to me, "Mum, you've got to stop." And I said, "I can't." I said, "Look at my life." And this young girl looked at me and she went, "Mum, you aren't drinking because of your life. Your life is like this because of your drinking. And if you don't stop, I'm going to run away too." And I just thought, oh my God. So she got the telephone number for AA out of the Yellow Pages. I called them, left a message, and the next day somebody rang me back from the helpline, and I got to my first meeting. It was a Friday. And my journey began. It wasn't sort of the end of the end, but it was the beginning of the beginning.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. It's very moving. It's very moving. And well, a quick shout out to everybody manning helplines everywhere, what we do without them. And of course, it's a really poignant moment when your daughter, how old was she? 13, 14?
She was 13 at the time.
Yeah, when has more clarity than you do. Yeah, the people who rely on you, who have been around for not that long, when they can see what is happening and are able to articulate it in a way that reflects our awful reality back to us. It's a really poignant and very moving moment.
And you know what's really crazy? Even crazier? That girl is now 30 years of age, and 4 weeks ago, I had to have her sectioned under the Mental Health Act. She was actually detained by the police under the Mental Health Act after 5 ambulances and numerous police calls, and me begging them to help me with her, to the point where she'd cut herself in so many places. She was cutting her feet. She tried to cut her own face off. She was screaming abuse at me. And she's staying with me at the moment, and she is now 5 days. She's actually 6 days sober. I'm doing some service tomorrow at a meeting, and she's coming to pick up a 1 week chip up off of me. So I actually did get the chance to be that mother that I always wanted,
and be there for her rock bottom after she's been
there for us,
for hers after she's been there for yours. I'm sorry to hear she's unwell, and sending love and strength your way.
Thank you.
Question 4, staying just maybe for 1 second longer in the spot that we were in at your worst, is our question 4. Did you ever want to die? Did you consider suicide?
Loads of times. Loads of times, I remember there was a time when I think I must have been trying to kill myself, and thank God for the allergy to alcohol in that moment, because I remember I thought, right, I'm going to go out with my favourite tipple, bottle of JD. And I remember buying the JD, and I got all the tablets, and then I started drinking. And the only thing I can think of is I thought, I'm going to finish this bottle because it's my last drink. And I came out of this blackout, and I had all these tablets on the side next to me, and I thought, oh my God, like one of the kids could have taken them. And I was just sort of like, well, it was just one of many attempts. I mean, even at the end, when I said, like, God, please put an end to this, I don't think I wanted to wake up. I just wanted to die.
It is where our illness takes us, and that's why we address it, of course. And I always say this, if you are in that place, listener, there is hope. Speak up, speak out, call for help. There's help available. Our question 5. What other methods did you try to get sober before finding the rooms? Or did you try any at all, really?
I tried just stopping and carrying on like I didn't have a problem, just going to the same places. And, I tried education. I got into university, and then I discovered that they had a bar there. So that was the end of that one.
Yeah.
That ended quite abruptly. That was, as soon as I got through college, but as soon as I arrived at university, I thought, oh my God, they've got a bar here. This is great. So I bought a laptop and sat in the bar. So that one ended. I tried physical exercise. I tried earning loads and loads of money, working every hour that God sends. I tried ending a relationship. You know, I tried inspirational books, which I never really ever got to the end of a single one of them, I don't think. You know, I tried everything. I tried moving. I tried the the navigational sort of solution. I know what I need to do. I need to move. If I can move geographically, then I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
I didn't take into mind the first person I was going to meet when I got there was going to be myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, I moved all the way to Liverpool from London. I thought that would help. It didn't. I was in a worse state by the time I had to come back.
Yeah.
I pretty much tried most things that it talks about in the beautiful book of Alcoholics Anonymous. You know, I tried timing it. I tried controlling it with not drinking in the morning, only drinking after a certain time. You know, I didn't drink during the week. I would only drink at weekends. I would only go to certain places to drink with certain people. I tried switching different. I tried the weed experiment where I only smoked weed. Then I tried the only ecstasy experiment where I only took ecstasy at midnight at nightclubs. That one went quite well, actually. That lasted the longest out of all of them. Then I tried only drinking wine. That was a good one to control my alcohol consumption.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So not for a lack of trying, then, clearly.
No, I tried many. There's probably more that I haven't even thought of that are out there somewhere. You know, I tried quite a lot.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I hear that. I really do hear that. I'm the sort of need to do something about this kind of guy, so I would try many, many different things. You know, absolutely. Yeah. Now, when you came into the rooms. That's our question 6. Did you struggle with the word God?
No, I didn't. As a child, I went to a Christian school. I had a really lovely experience with church and with my peers at school. I auditioned for the choir about 10 times, and in the end, I think they just took me. I can't sing a note, but they just took me on. Because I was so persistent. I was desperate to be in their choir. I loved it. I loved church.
Yeah.
I loved the God thing. But as time progressed, I felt that God had a problem with me.
Right.
I knew He was there, but I thought God had a problem with the Jaynie word. You know, I thought I was the issue.
Oh, I'm loving this. Let's just slow this down for a second. You know, the question is, you know, did you struggle with the word God? And, you know, you turned it around somehow in that time, of course, not now, but in that space, you know, and you think that God had a problem with the Jaynie word, you know. So how did that manifest? Was it that you blamed God for all the bad things that were happening to you? Is that what you mean?
No, I never blamed God. I always internalised it. I believed that this stuff that happened with the paedophiles when I was a child, because I would meet the older group of peers that were in the environment, and they would take a few of us to them. I mean, I can only guess what their reasons were for doing it now, you know. But I believed in that moment, you know. I didn't really realise what had happened to me until I fell pregnant with my first child at 22, and then I was like, oh my God, I've been abused. Up until that point, I'd always thought that as this little girl that I'd made this conscious decision to participate in these activities, and I thought that it made me bad and rotten, and that, you know, that I wasn't worthy of God's love.
Right.
You know, I didn't blame Him for anything that went on around me. I thought that I was the problem. I really believed that it was me, and I believed that I deserved it.
Which is incredibly sad, Jaynie.
Yeah.
It's a very sad thing, that, you know, and it's a very sad state of things. It's interesting, isn't it, that I suppose it's fair to say we fall into a few categories, really, don't we, when we come into the rooms? You know, my category would be that I struggle with the word God, and by the sounds of it, you know, you struggled with yourself and perhaps didn't feel worthy. I'm using your words, of course, here. So either, you know, we feel that we're not worthy, or we feel that in my case, I'm angry with God. He's done this or that to me. That struggle can manifest in many ways, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that what it is, as we learn, as we go along, that it's the relationship which is paramount. And when you feel that unworthy, how can you have a relationship?
Yeah, definitely.
With anything.
No, absolutely. Thank you. Our question 7 is, how do you experience your higher power today?
Oh, he's my best friend. It's really funny because I've just discovered what a trauma response is. because I do everything myself. It's like, I'm not going into therapy. I don't need it. 12 steps to fix it. And it actually is. It's taken a lot longer on my own, I must admit,
Yeah.
But I'm kind of getting there. And I had this massive epiphany about my trauma response. It's like, because when I get something wrong, I automatically try to justify what I've done, not because I don't want to take responsibility, but I want to lessen the severity of the punishment. And I've just, and I talk to God constantly. I'm in this constant dialogue with him. He's the first person power that I speak to when I wake up before I've even lifted my head off the pillow. And last thing of an evening, that's what I do is I lay my head down. And I've recently been practicing this constantly, turning into God constantly. This step 10 practice is, for me, the power of now. This fourth dimension that I'm aiming for is this power of now. It's living in step 10. And then it was really funny because all of a sudden I realised that I keep ending back at that turning point. And I'm like, how did I get here again? How am I at this turning point again? And I could see God just standing there saying to me, keep coming back.
Yeah.
Keep coming back. Don't leave before the miracle happens. All these things that I never understood what they meant. And it's like, and I just thought, it's grown. It's grown from this tiny little seed to just thinking, do you know what? Maybe this God malarkey's got something about it. Maybe he isn't angry with me. Maybe my thinking around how God feels about me is just as delusional as my need to control my drinking, And that's how it started. And now it's everything. It's everything. My relationship, how I see God is everything. It has to be for someone like me. And I love it.
Amazing. Thank you. Our question 8, which parts of the steps were the most difficult for you?
When I initially went through them, I was actually taken through them by a guy that was completely illiterate. I didn't know it. He hid it really well. He got me to read the book, and there were some prompts in the margins, and he would go, "Stop. What does that say?" And I'd say, "Did it?" And he'd go, "Well, did it?" So I sort of hit the floor running with it, and I just did it. I just did it. I accepted my powerlessness. I was God. More was willing to believe. It was like my life was terrible. It was terrible. Here I am. I've got 4 beautiful children. They're imminently going to be removed from me. One's run away from home telling people I'm dead. I've died twice in front of my children. My ex-partner is in prison for raping me, and here I am faced with that. I can't stop drinking on my own will. I've been in and out of the fellowship for 3.5 years now, and I'm stood with the prospect. Am I willing to believe? I was like, boy, something's got to work because nothing else has. Nothing else has. It's like, this is my only chance. So 2 was pretty easy. 3, making a decision. I couldn't wait to get all that stuff out of the way, which was mind blowing. 5 was quite difficult. I think out of respects to difficulty, what I struggled with, I think 5 was the only one I really balked at. I was like, I'm not going to tell him that.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep that one to myself.
Yeah, let's just slow this down for a second. Step 5, I mean, often when we speak of the steps that we balked at, right, 4 usually comes to mind. 9 often comes to mind because we have to face other people. But 5 is also incredibly powerful because it's one thing maybe writing things down just between me and a piece of paper. It's an entirely different thing sometimes to actually face someone, because when we face that other person, of course, we face ourselves and we face God. And that's of course why we do it. And it's not an easy thing to do sometimes to get all these things out that we've been really, really busy trying to hide.
Absolutely. And all them things that I craved as a child, the love, the acceptance, that you're okay as you are, you're not a bad person. In that moment, I thought, right, the first person that's actually come into my life, the obsession to drink and use has been removed for the first time since I was a kid. And here I am now thinking, if I tell him what I did as a kid, he's going to throw me out of his house.
Yeah.
It absolutely terrified me. It absolutely terrified me. And I held a couple of them back. And I did make a decision though, whilst I was talking to him. I said to him, I've got one here that I wasn't going to tell you. And he was a man in front of me that had no training in this field whatsoever. And he just said to me, are you going to share it with me then? There was no pressure, no nothing. And I said to him, I shared with him about going to the paedophiles.
Yeah.
I said to him, I'm a really bad person, aren't I? I said, you don't want me around now, do you? And I remember he just looked at me and he went, my God. He said, you were just a little girl looking for love. And the hardest one was the one that freed me the most.
That's always the way though, isn't it?
Yeah. And thank God. And that's what I say to anybody that I'm trying to guide through this process.
Yeah.
Listen, don't hold anything back, because that's the one that will give you the most. My experience anyway,
I'm obviously not well equipped to comment on the process in terms of, the abuse that you've endured. So I'd rather stay quiet and not say something silly, right? But it is important, though, still that we address all of these things as they have happened to us. And you've done this so brilliantly and really, really in a powerful way in our conversation so far. So I just wanted to address that and thank you for it as well. Our question 9. Which character defects give you most trouble?
Fear. Fear. Yeah, it runs through me like, corroded thread, just as it describes. It's that absolute, it's the catalyst to everything that I create, because I am the creator of my own disasters. I create them, I enlarge upon them, and it's definitely fear, It's definitely fear.
Yeah.
It just starts everything for me. It kicks off self-pity, it kicks off resentment and harm. I try to protect myself when I just don't rely upon God's power. When I take my own will back, there's always fear. There's always fear at the bottom of it. I mean, is that a character defect, or is it just something that's everything's got a yin and a yang, isn't it? Is it just the opposite to God? Is it just when I'm not in God?
Well, I suppose if we follow the book, then what we'd say is that if you're not in God, you're in self. So I think that does make sense. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yes, self, that self-centeredness, I think would probably be the one from the book that describes it for me, because when that fear kicks in, that self-centeredness, I become abnormally aware of myself and this need to protect myself from punishment. This is what I've got to watch for. this is what I've got to watch for. It's like it's taken me a bit of time. I've sort of stripped back the layers of the onion. That was another one I hated that they used to say. And I'm stripped back the layers of the onion, and I'm getting down to this sort of like, I'm really getting to root causes and conditions. And, you know, it's not about what they did. It's how it's still manifesting in my life, like 40 years later. It's like, really? Like, surely you would have grown up by now and dealt with that. Immaturity. That's probably a character defect. Emotional immaturity, you know? Yeah.
Thank you. It's something I can relate to. Question 10. What is the best thing recovery has given you?
Forgiveness and freedom. You know, right? So my son that ran away from home, I ended up 12-stepping him when I was 2 years clean and sober. We hadn't spoke for 6 years. And 2 years after that, I had the privilege of taking my son through a 12-step program of recovery. He's now 8 years in recovery and helps phenomenal amount of young men, you know. So forgiveness, his ability to be able to forgive me when I made my amends to him on that day when I bumped into him, you know, forgiveness as well has given me freedom. The paedophiles that abuse me, I now make a donation to a paedophile organisation that helps to rehabilitate these people that ask for it.
Yeah.
You know, when I was making my amends, I realised that I'm not God. How can I ask for forgiveness if I'm not prepared to forgive?
Yeah.
You know, so forgiveness there was absolutely unbelievable. And the guy I was in this really violent relationship with for the best part of 16 years, I've on a couple of occasions I've tried to 12-step him. You know, and it all boils down to forgiveness. And I believe that forgiveness is another, it's a really loving form of acceptance. That when I can get acceptance around a situation, I can forgive. I think what it is, it's not that when I did my inventory and I went through this process, and I have been through it again recently with another sponsor last year, and I was able to look at certain things that have happened, I've realised that I'd forgiven the people, but I hadn't necessarily been able to let go of how the behaviour had affected me. And for me, I go very deep. I'm a very deep person. So this process for me has been quite long in recognising how these behaviours have affected me as an individual, and how they're manifesting in my reaction to other people.
Yeah.
So forgiveness is paramount. Forgiveness of others, forgiveness of myself, and forgiveness of behaviours. Yeah, forgiveness, definitely.
Wonderful. Our question 11. What would you say to a newcomer or someone wondering if they're an addict?
I would say to them, are you doing something that you don't want to do? And is it costing you more than money? You know, this isn't about how much, how often, and what it is. Am I doing something that I beg to God and I swear on people's lives that I'm never going to do again, including my own? And yet I find myself doing it and wishing that I hadn't.
Yeah.
If you know, if you can sort of answer yes to that kind of stuff, then maybe we need to go through a process, because for me, step one is identification and qualification. You know, if you identify with the symptoms, can you qualify yourself? You know, it's like, am I doing it? And it really hurts me and others, and yet I keep doing it again and again, even though I don't want to. For me, that's addiction.
Thank you for that. That was question 11. And our last question, our question 12. What do you want your higher power to say to you, quote unquote, at the pearly gates?
Oh, keep coming back.
Nicely done.
Yeah. Right, this moment. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah,
that is amazing. Jaynie, this was such a great conversation. It was very powerful, and there was really many moving moments in there. And I'd like to thank you. We're very honest, very generous with your sharing. And there's such a message of hope in there and of courage. So thank you so much for being my guest today on 12 Steps and 12 Questions.
Oh, God bless you, Silvio. Thank you so much. And thanks for everything that you do, and thanks for giving me this opportunity to just share this experience with you. It's been wonderful. Thank you.
We've come to the end of this episode. Thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed it and would like other addicts and alcoholics to hear it, then please make the pesky AIs and algorithms work their 12th step. Hit like and subscribe. While this pod is based on the 12-step recovery program, it's not officially affiliated with any 12-step fellowship. 12 Steps and 12 Questions is not substance or behavior specific, it's fully self-supporting and not for profit. And you know this next bit. It's not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, and it neither endorses nor opposes any causes.